Good morning, Year 3-4. Welcome to the third and final lesson of the Happiness Project. I'm loving some of the artwork that I've seen, absolutely fantastic, and I really hope that you are enjoying the project. Okay, so for today's lesson, we are really rounding this all up now and bringing it all together. Remember, this whole project has been about you and your emotions, how you're feeling about things, and about you and your personality and what you like and what brings you happiness and joy. Okay, so we're going to go into that more today. So what you're going to need for today, you're going to need some paper. I've said A4, but if you have got bigger, I'm going to be demonstrating on A3, so it's nice and big for you guys to see. So if you want to join me and go for bigger, amazing, but A4 will be fine because today is a little bit more detailed. You're going to need a pencil, a HB, and if you have any artist pencil at home, if you want to grab a 2B and a 6B or something similar, then you can have a go with those as well. I'm going to be doing the start of the drawing in a 2H because it's nice and light and gives quite a sharp line because the H pencils, the lead is a lot harder, okay? And then of course, colour. So because on the other part of the project, we have looked at watercolours, today I'm going to be demonstrating using pastels. If you haven't got pastels at home, that's absolutely fine, okay? You can do this with anything. If you want to have a go with paint, if you want to use crayons, pencils, whatever it is you're using, as long as it's lovely and colourful, because that's one of the main things in it today, is that lovely colour. Okay, so today we are going to be learning how to draw a detailed eye. Now, the reason we're doing eyes to round this project off is because you may have heard the phrase, eyes are the window to the soul, okay? And when you're drawing an eye, you're not just drawing the physical eye, you're actually also drawing a reflection, because no matter what eye you draw or what picture you see or whose eye you look in, there will be a reflection in it, because eyes are wet, so they automatically reflect, okay? And this is our chance to be really quite creative, and I'm quite excited about this. I love doing this. It's one of my favorite things to do with my own artwork. So here's some examples of some very creative eyes. So over here you've got this cityscape in an eye, you've got a diamond, we got a crow, and we've got this clock here. And can you see, I love this, how the numbers are kind of falling out of the eye. So we're going to think about us, everything that we've done from the start of this project to now. So we're thinking about the things that we liked, the elements of our personality, the things that support us, everything that we've thought about over the last 2 weeks. I would like you to bring it all together today and just take a moment. So you might want to pause the video in a minute and just maybe write down some ideas. I want you really thinking about the things that you love to do. And not just the things that you love to do, the things that make you just really happy. Because your eye today is going to be a reflection of you, okay? We're going to be very imaginative with our eyes. So I'm going to talk you through the drawing process, okay? And then we're going to get to be quite imaginative. So having a look here, these are the steps to drawing an eye, and I'm going to walk you through this. So you start by drawing the outline, okay, and then the iris, the pupil, okay, and you get all the shapes together, and then you start adding in shapes and details. Now we're going to pause around about this point here, because this is where we're going to add our little bit of creativity in. This is where we're going to add our own element to it, and then we'll continue on this process. So if you need to come back to this part of the video at any point, then please do, but I am going to be going through this with you. I'm going to be doing this with you today, okay? So here are some examples of some of the eyes that I've done. Now, I did these eyes back in the first lockdown. So I'm sure you can remember quite clearly, we were so lucky with the weather, and it was bright and it was sunny, and we had the paddling pool out a lot, and it was that gorgeous kind of summer feeling. So although it was quite a worrying time, there were a lot of really lovely things going on as well. And we were so lucky with the weather, and we got to go out lots. So this is really reflected in my artwork here, because it just made me think of all those bright, beautiful colours. And in the summer, when we get those beautiful sunsets and sunrises that turn the sky orange and pink and purple, and it just brings me so much happiness. So that's really what came into these. Now, I wonder if you can get a feeling for the type of things that I like from my artwork here. So if you come over here, you can see that these have got a very earthy tone. They're very much about the natural world. So this one was inspired by the kind of blues and greens that you see when you see the Earth from space. Okay, hence why it's got this darker area here. And here, over here, is of course a little forest. And it's because I love being out in nature. I love going for walks and things like that. So that's really reflected in these eyes here. This one over here is one of my favorites, and actually this is all about when we were in that first lockdown, because this actually is my daughter here, and she just had this real longing to go out and be able to, well, just go out and see her friends. And you know, this is what this one was all about for me. Okay, so you can see a little bit of me reflected in the eyes, and that's what I want you to do today. So think about these questions. How do you see the world? What are you passionate about? And what would be reflected in your eye? So you might want to take a moment, pause the video, and write down a few things. I hope you got lots of ideas. Okay, now keep hold of those, keep them close by, because we're going to use them. Now, I have picked out these two eyes here because I really love them. There's something really quite special about them. Now, because we're using pastels today, I'm going to be focusing on maybe something a little bit more creative like this today. Okay, and I wanted to show you. So in a minute, I'm going to flip my screen around, because the whole school are doing the happiness project at the moment, but you're all doing it slightly differently. And I'm going to show you the one that I did with the year 5-6, so that you can see, because I did that with watercolors. Okay, and I went along the lines of a kind of spacey night scene. Okay, so I'm going to flip the screen around now, and you're going to be able to see everything that I'm doing on my paper. Here we go. So this is the one that I did yesterday with the year 5-6s, and I've used watercolour. So if you are, because I'm demonstrating in pastels, if you are wanting to use watercolour, I did the background of the iris here first, making sure, so we're going to talk about using a reflection in it in a minute. Okay, and I had to layer it that way, so just so you're aware. So this is how it might look if you were to use watercolors or paint or something like that. But today I'm going to be taking you through, and we're going to be using pastels. Okay, I'm going to use the chalky pastels, because even if you haven't got pastels at home, if you've got chalk, something like that, then you'll get a very similar effect. So the first part is to draw an eye. So like I said to you before, I'm going to be using a 2H. But if you've got a HB at home, which is just your ordinary everyday pencil, then grab that for this first part. Make sure it's nice and sharp. Okay, and then let's start by doing the outline of the eye. So the first part is this top curve of the eye. So you see that there, just like an arch. So we do this curve. So the eye that I'm teaching you today is just as though you're looking at the eye face on. Now I'm going to do it a bit darker for you so that you can see it a bit clearer. There we go. Okay. Now, before we do that bottom line, what a lot of people do is just join that up. So it's almost like an oval with a point at each end. but actually you've got the corner of the eye, the tear duct bit. So for that, to make sure that I put that in, I'm just going to do a very light little circle there. And I'm going to go around that, okay? You see that there? I've just gone around that. Now from there, I'm going to curve it, and then that's when I'm going to do my second line, the bottom line. Now the bottom line, you can almost see like the ridge of where that bottom eyelid is. So what we're going to do is draw a second line, okay? Can you see that there? And this second line on the outside here, that's where the lashes are going to stem from. Now, can you see it just kind of joins in there? Okay, there we go. So that is the outline of our eye. Now, what we want to do is put the circular bit in the middle. Okay, now a mistake that a lot of people usually do is they just draw a circle. And actually, when you look at somebody's eyes, so if you've got a moment, you can either go and look in the mirror, or you can have a look in one of your family members that are around, look in their eye, and you'll see that actually you usually can't see either both the top and the bottom of the iris, or at the very least the top, depending on which direction they're looking. Okay, so when you're drawing your circle in the middle, it actually needs to be bigger than what the eye would be. So the circle, if you look, if you do it with your finger, actually goes over that eyelid line. Now we don't want to draw it over the eyelid line because it's inside, okay, but we need to imagine that that circle, there we go, would be going behind, because it's going behind the eyelids, okay? So when you're drawing it, you're not drawing that top and bottom bit, okay? So there we go, we've got that in there. And then the next part is the pupil, okay? And for that, just draw a nice light circle to begin with, because part of this, I'm drawing it nice and light because I want to do a reflection in there, okay? Now the last part then, before we carry on, is you've got above the eye, there's your eyelid, the crease line. So we're just going to pop that in as well. So that it doesn't join up to it, but we're just going to draw that second line above it like that. Okay, so now you have the full outline of an eye. Now before we do the next part, have a look at your list and think about, right, what is it that makes me me? What do I love doing? So perhaps you love swimming, and therefore this might want to look quite watery. Perhaps you love being out in nature and going for forest walks or ocean walks maybe. So maybe the inside of your iris is going to be something to do with that. Perhaps you like football. Okay, maybe your whole iris is one giant football. Okay, I want you to really think about what it is that makes you you. What makes you happy? If somebody was to look into your eyes and see a reflection of you, what would they see? Okay, so just take a moment and think about that. If you want to pause the video here, that's absolutely fine. And I want you to be really clear on what it is that you want to do. Now, hopefully you've got your ideas together now and you know what you're going to want to do. I'm going to go for that beautiful picture that we were looking at a moment ago with the forest, because I've already said I really like being out in nature. So I really want that to be a part of my drawing here, okay? So with my lighter pencil, so I'm using my 2H still. If you want to use your HB still, I want you to just put a very light outline of what you want to be in your drawing. Now, I love nighttime and I love anything to do with the moon. So I'm actually going to make my reflection a moon shape. Okay, so I'm just going to do that a little bit darker for you guys to see. So I have made my reflection a moon shape. Now, normally, So if I show you this one, what I would say to people, if you want to do a normal standard reflection, it's almost like doing a pizza slice in the eye. See, like this one here. And this one for me was a bit like a shooting star. So depending on what is your reflection of you, whatever is your reflection of you, it might change the shape of the reflection. Because remember, we are being very creative here. Now, the one thing you need to make sure is when we start applying the colour that this bit stays light, okay? It needs to stay light. We need to keep the colour off of that. All right. So, like I said, I'm quite a fan of woodland and going out for walks in the wood. I'm also quite a fan of the sea and things like that. So I could do like a sea down here, and this could all be the sky. But I'm gonna stick with the woodland because I want to be quite creative with the lashes here as well. So I'm going to do it differently to this one. I'm actually going to do a woodland. It's actually going to start and it's going to come along the eye. So I'm going to try and keep that kind of curvy shape to it. So I'm just doing outlines at the moment. So these are kind of the outlines of the tree trunks. And I actually want that to continue. So I'm just doing that there. So can you see I'm just putting the structure in. I'm not putting the details in yet. One of my favorite animals is a fox. So I'm going to do a fox here. So I'm just doing a little outline. Okay, so I'm keeping it all very simple at the moment. Very, very simple, just the outlines. So I'm using my shapes to create these animals. If you've worked with me before, then hopefully you'll have a good idea how to create animals. Okay, there we go. And maybe there'll be, I might do an owl or something sat in that tree there. Okay, but I don't want to do too many other details because I actually want to do it with the colour. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap my pencil over because I really want to darken up some of these lines now that I'm happy with what they're looking like. So I'm going to get my 2B and I'm just now going to go along the eyelid line like this. And you see the difference with that because the as you go, the higher the number with the B pencils, the softer the lead is. So that means that it leaves a darker mark, and it's also because it's softer. That's what's great for doing shading. So when you're doing your blending, and you want to get some shadows in there. So that's what I'm going to do in a moment as well. I'm going to put in some of the shading ready. So even though I'm doing it with pastels, I just want to be clear on where that shadow is going to be. So let's make this a bit darker because an iris has actually always got quite a nice rim to it. And then I'm going to get outlined, get my moon shape ready because I don't want to be going inside that. Okay, and then if we come back to the tear duct, the corner of the eye, I'm just going to join that up there. Okay, and then often that's got a reflection in it, so I'm going to put that kind of pizza slice there in it so that I know that I'm not going to colour that. So then with, so you can either stick with something like a 2B like I've got here, or there's a 6B as well. 6B is obviously quite a bit softer, but I'm just going to start putting in some shading. Now, because an eyeball is round, the corners of the eye are often shaded. You need some shadows. So again, go and have a look in your own eye, go and have a look in the mirror, okay, and have a look and find where those shadows are. Now, what usually is the case is that there's a shadow along the top of the eyelid because that's where the eyelashes are. So they often, and most of the time, light's coming from above, because if we're out in the daytime, that's where the sun is. So there's often a shadow up here, okay? And then because it's curved, the corners are shaded as well most of the time. So I'm just going to add in that shading because then it just makes it look 3D. Now, occasionally, depending on which way the light's coming from, then that bottom bit will have a little bit of a shadow as well, because remember, it's curved both ways. So I'm almost doing the shading just all around the edge. Can you see that there? And I'm using my 6B because it's nice and soft, but can you see I am not pressing hard. I haven't got it on the point because I don't want to create a line. I'm using the side of the pencil. And then what I'm going to do, once I'm happy with all of that, I'm then going to just blend it in. There we go. Okay. Now I'm just using a rubber because I don't want this bit shaded. So I'm just taking some of that out. And because it was nice and light, and because it's not the point of the pencil, it rubs out really quite easily as well. So then I want some shading in this bit. Now this bit's really quite a bit darker. So I'm going to get that in. But remember, I've drawn where the reflection would be, so I'm not going to be putting the dark on there. Now, if you haven't got different types of pencils, you can do this with a HB or whatever colours you've got. You can do it with the black of that colour. So if you are using pastels like me, you can do it with the black, okay, or whatever it is that you are using. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I've got what's starting to look like a bit more of a 3D eye. So I'm going to dive in and start doing some of the colours. So because I want this natural scene, I'm going to pick out at least 2 different greens and a yellow. These are all quite natural earthy colours. Okay, and I might add in some flecks of blue as well as we go. So I'm just going to get those ready there. Okay. Right, so I'm going to start with the light green, and I'm just gonna go over all of it. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you go into the pupil bit. The one bit though that you need to make sure that you're not going into is your reflection. So mine is my moon shape reflection, so I'm not going into that. There we go. Just going over and just getting that covering of colour. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit darker at the edges, which actually is perfect because that is how the iris of the eye is. It's usually got this darker rim. So I'm just trying to blend it as carefully as possible. There we go. Now, you guys, of course, can stop the video at any point and give yourself more time to do this. So I'm only doing this quicker for you so that you can see what I'm doing. So you'll still be able to, you can't really see it on the screen, but I can still see the pencil marks that I made earlier, my kind of outline. Now I'm using the darker green now, and I'm going to do the edging like this. And I'm going to do, down here is going to be a bit darker as well. And then I'm just going to draw that in a little bit. I'll do it up here as well because that's shadow. And I'm just going to draw it in randomly because actually, if you look into an eye, it almost looks like there's lots of like squiggly patterns. And I'm just drawing that in there, okay? Now the great thing is about this is once you know the process of doing these eyes, you might have lots of things that actually make you quite happy. So you could do quite a few of these if you wanted to. Because once you know how to do it, it's quite a lot of fun. So there we go. I've got my 2 different tones of green in there. And I'm really liking those 2 together. Those colour harmonies. So remember on the colour wheel, when the colours sit together, they are great for blending together. Okay, so now I'm going to get my yellow, and I just want to add in some kind of flecks of yellow, because no matter what your eye colour is, often the amount of times I've seen like these flecks of gold in people's eyes, even my eyes, which are very, very dark, very, very dark brown, when the sun shines on them, you can see like the little flecks of gold. So it's nice to have these little flecks of colour coming through. Now I'm using, can you see I'm using a different finger here to blend this in, because the green is really dark on my other finger. So if I use that, it will just make it all green, and you won't see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to neaten this up a little bit now with my rubber. And because I'm using these chalky pastels, I can. If you're using watercolours, you're having to go with something like that instead, then use the water to clean up any bits that have perhaps gone out, and then you can soak it up with a tissue. Okay, so I'm just neatening that up. There we go. Yeah, so can you see it coming together? Right, now what I'm going to use is I'm actually going to get my black. Oh, actually, no, first I'm going to do my fox. Okay, now foxes are like a red and an orange with like a white tip on their tail. So I'm just going to get the colour in, get this orange in first, get some shades of red in as well. So I'm kind of putting the red where the shadow would be. I'm going to dust it off quickly. And what you can get, which are great for very fine work like this, are these. And therefore, if you've ever got these you might have got them in a set, in a kit before. And they are there, they're just to help you blend without having to use your fingers, so you can get them in different widths. So I'm just going to use those just to blend it. There we go. Just blending that. I'm using a sponge here just to get rid of some dust as well. There we go. And then actually, because this is quite a small detail, I'm going to use my 6B to come in and do the details of that. So my softer pencil, so where the shading would be, the tips of the fox's ears and things. And that's the great thing about using the pastels, is that you can use the pencils with it, and you can use it to get that shade in. Here we go. Okay, and then of course the fox has a white tip. There we go. All right, so I've got my little foxy. There he is. And now what I'm going to do is my tree lines. You could do this with the pencil. Again, if you're using something like pastels, like me, or chalks, you could actually use your pencil to do this, or you can use the black of whatever colours it is you're using. Now I want these trees to kind of be like silhouettes, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm not doing lots and lots of detail. I am making them into silhouettes. Now what I am doing those, I'm using the point, not the side like we did before. Okay, and I'm just going to get this tree shape. So I'm doing like a Christmas tree shape. You can do your trees, you could do your trees like I did mine yesterday. There we go. And if you are using the black of whatever medium it is that you're using, you'll find it is a lot darker than a pencil, because the pencil's always going to have that grey look. So I'm just doing this line down the bottom here, just to darken that up. I'm just doing like a bit of a grass line as well. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully see if I can bash this off without smudging that black. There we go. And again, if you've got a rubber, you can just neaten it off like this. Okay. Now, be very careful. If you're using colours that blend really easily, can you see how easy it is to get it on your hand? Now, what you can do is you can grab a piece of paper or a tissue, a napkin or something, and just have that underneath when you're working, because it stops you from smudging it. There we go. Ah, see, like I've just done that. Now, when you finished your pastel drawing, what you can do is, if your parents have got something like hairspray at home, you can get proper fixing sprays, but hairspray works just fine. And so if maybe your mum, sister, auntie, whoever it is you've got at home, they might have hairspray, and you can use that to fix these colours. Now what I'm going to do is use my nice dark black, and I'm going to fill in my pupil. There we go. Now it's looking really dusty at the moment. I'm going to try and get that nice edge line. I'm going to get one of my blendy sticks. And there we go. And I'm just going to get that nice sharp line around the edge before I dust that off. Okay. There we go. Okay, now what you need to do is just neaten that off a little bit if some of the colours have come out, because the last part is we're going to do the lashes, and we want it nice and neat for that. Okay, so you might want to, at this point, pause the video and go and wash your hands. Okay, now if you have been using like these chalky pastels or something like that, like me, if you want to, if you have got hairspray at home, and give it a little bit of a spray before we move on to this next bit as well, that might be quite helpful. So we've got a couple of choices with this bit, depending on what you have at home. I really like using ink for the lash line, so that could be, if we were in school, that would be a handwriting pen, for example. Okay, because can you see that I've put all this chalky colour in here? I haven't used it anywhere else on my eye, which means I could use something like ink, or if you've got felt tips, any kind of pen at home, then you could use that. So I'm going to show you, first of all, I'm going to use my 6B just to show you first, and then I'm going to go over the top with some ink myself. Okay, so to do the lashes, you start on the lid line for these top lashes, and you need to go right into the corner here. And just so you're aware that actually the lashes, can you see here, they don't just go straight out. So often unrealistic eyes, it's because you're just doing these straight lines for the lashes. Actually what they do is they start here, they curve down. This is why it creates this shadow on the inside. They curve down and then flick up. So let's have a look at doing that here. So you start here, okay, and they curve down and flick. There's your first one. Curve down and flick. So it is a bit like doing a tick, but not quite as pointy. Curve down and do a flick. Curve down and do a flick. Okay, and we're just going to put a few all the way along. Now, the more you do this, the more you'll get into the swing of it. Okay, now as you're coming up here, they're getting straighter and straighter, because what's going to happen is you get to about here and you need to start doing them in the opposite direction. There we go. Okay, so they're just my base ones. They're my structure ones, okay, just so that I know how long I want them to be and how spaced out I want them to be. Now we're going to go along the bottom and do the same. Now for this one, see this second outside line, that is where they're starting from. Now real lashes, they all start in slightly different places, but we're using this line as a guide. So again, the same. Now your bottom lashes, they are shorter than your top lashes. So just keep that in mind as you're doing it. So you start here and flick. All right, so they're getting straighter and straighter, same as the top ones. And then about here, it's about the same as the top. You're going to start going in a different direction. And as you get closer to this bit here, they will get shorter. All right, so they are my guide lashes now. So if you're using pencil, you can now then go and start filling these up a bit more. Now, remember, all the lashes, they should be going in slightly different directions, slightly different angles, slightly different lengths even. They should be starting in different places, and then you just build them up. And some will cross over, okay? Some will be slightly longer. And as long as you're consistently using the same kind of shape, then they will look fairly realistic. Okay, and they can kind of cross over. And I'm using this is the 6B, so this is a darker pencil. So if you're using colouring pencils at home, you'd want to use your black. Okay, you could use charcoal. If you've been using like chalky pastels and you want a similar look, charcoal's quite good. So I'm going to go along the bottom line as well. Or like I said, you can use something like felt tips. If you're using watercolours, then just a fine paintbrush. Or I love these, and this is what I'll show you in a minute. These are my watercolour pens. And they've got, so you can get normal pens like this, they've got like a brush tip, and that's really great for doing lashes. So I'll do a few of those in this in a minute so that you can see. Here we go, so just filling that out. There we go. All right, so if you're using a pen, you do the same. You're just building it up. And what you can do, if you are using a pen, you could then go in and do some finer details in here. So what I'd want to do is like a black line around here, around the edge. Okay, so you just keep going until you're happy with it, until you think, oh, this is starting to look real now. There we go. And then I'll do a few of those down the bottom as well, just to make sure it matches. So this is, although I've mainly used pastels here, it is classed as a mixed media piece because we've used the different pencils, we've used the pastels, and now I'm using the watercolour pens as well. It's really great to explore different mediums because they all offer a slightly different look, different texture, and they just, by combining different mediums, you can get a lovely piece of artwork. So what I'd do now to finish off is I'd go along and I would put in some finer details, you know, straighten this line up a bit, darken this up a bit more, and so on until it's where I really want it to be. So just keep working on yours until you are really happy with it and you think that it really is a representation of you. Because remember, the whole point of doing this eye is it's supposed to be a reflection of you, of your personality, of the things that make you happy. Okay? I cannot wait to see these. They're going to be so good. And to see your creativity. Now, remember, you can put anything you like. I showed you those examples. If you want to rewind the video and have a look and see some of the other examples, like the diamond one and the galaxy one, just really use those examples. So you could pause it on one of those maybe, because with my eye here, what I would want to do, if I was to carry on with it, I'd want to turn some of those lashes into a tree, into some trees actually coming up from the eye as well. Yeah, and just get really, really creative with that. Okay, now I really hope that you enjoyed it. And like I said, I can't wait to see your artwork. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week for something different. All right, take care. Bye.